Hello, Leon here for another podcast, and today I wanted to give you 4 takeaways from the book Deep Work by Cal Newport. So first of all, what is deep work? So in the book, he describes it as a very complex task that is rare these days and that is very valuable. It's basically where you're stretching your capacity, whether physical or mental, to your limit. So you're doing work that is kind of difficult, is at the edge of what you can do. It challenges your whole mental faculties or physical abilities, and therefore it's quite valuable in the marketplace. And he argues that a lot of the work that is done in today's society is shallow work, and so he kind of contrasts shallow work versus deep work, and why we should strive to do more deep work, and why in the future it's going to be even more important to do that because things are getting automated and things are getting outsourced. So that's his definition of deep work. So let's go into the 4 takeaways that I got from this book. This is a fantastic book, by the way. I listened to it on audio version, and it's awesome. I love books that are not too long. Sometimes I get a book and it's like 10, 15 hours I have to listen to it, or just even a big book to read. I hate that, okay? I'd rather have a good 200-page book than a 700-page book that is way too much. So I listening to it, I don't remember exactly how many hours it was. I think it was about, I want to say 5 or 6 hours. So I definitely recommend it. There was no fluff for me, at least, and I even listened to it again after certain parts. I listened to them again. So definitely recommend you check it out if you're into doing anything that is more creative or complex, or if you're an entrepreneur, or you're just someone who is interested in getting better at a hobby or anything like that. It can help you. So let's go on to takeaway number 1, and that is that if to do deep work, you need to basically train your focus and concentration. Okay. So he talks about how constant switching of tasks kind of rewires your brain to basically not be able to pay attention to one thing at a time. So it basically makes you not be able to distinguish from what is important versus not important. So it's kind of like if you're constantly distracting, let's say, you're working for a bit and then you're opening up your Facebook account and thinking that's going to help you. Well, he argues that all of this distraction is doing you no good, and that in order for you to do real good deep work, you need to train yourself to be able to focus for long periods of times without any distraction. And so he talks about blocking 90 minutes at a time, or we'll talk about some other strategies that he talks about, but basically blocking out time for that, and building the habit of concentration. Basically, you want to work at intense blocks of time instead of, starting a little bit here, picking up a phone call, checking your social media every 10 minutes or something like that. He argues for long stretches of deep work so that you can build the habit of focusing on one task and really producing stellar work. Okay, so that's takeaway number 1. Let's talk about takeaway number 2, and I've got some notes here. He talks about scheduling your deep work ahead of time. That was a big theme of the book, and he gives several different examples of how you can do that. So some of the ways that people do this is they actually schedule like a full-on retreat to kind of get away and, let's say, write their novel, he talks about Bill Gates doing the infamous Think Weeks. You can look it up. He goes away, I think, at least once a year and he calls it Think Week. Basically, he reads a lot of stuff. He thinks about things deeply. Let's say he wants to solve a particular problem. He'll take a week just to go away somewhere, to be on his own, think, read, and that's one of the ways that he recommends doing deep work. Other people, they take a full summer to work on a specific thing, like let's say writing a novel, finishing up a movie script, or something like that. Then there are other examples that he talks about of people who just every day they take out a chunk of their day to dedicate to deep work. So he talked about somebody who gets up at like 5:30 a.m. and 5:30 to 7 a.m. that was his time to do deep work. And he still has a 9-to-5 job. So basically, that was a way for him to get his deep work done earlier in the day so that he could still do his 9-to-5 job afterwards and already having done his deep work. By the way, he also talks about how deep work is very fulfilling. So the whole point of deep work is that it's extremely meaningful to one's life. So that is why you want to prioritize it. Then he also talks about scheduling deep work by taking one day out of every week to do deep work. So basically dedicate a full day to just go into that depth. Okay, so these are some of the ways that he talked about scheduling deep work ahead of time. But basically, he argues that most of us, we would be better off at scheduling things ahead of time, scheduling that deep work ahead of time, rather than just kind of winging it, all right? So let's go into takeaway number 3, and that is drain the shallows, as he says. And that's basically replacing shallow work with deep work. Okay, so it's not that you have to trim all the shallow work, but if you're constantly going on social media or you're constantly going on these meetings that aren't doing you any good, if you're constantly available for chat or you're constantly checking emails, that's what he considers shallow work. And so he talks about how you want to make sure that you are prioritizing deep work versus shallow work. And basically not having more shallow work than deep work. He talks a lot about how awful social media is, and that basically most people assume just because this social media tool is available, we have to use it. And he argues in the book that we don't have to use all the tools, and that just because it's available, just because there's some little benefit to it, does not mean that we have to necessarily use social media. And he talked about several authors that everybody's telling them go on Twitter, connect with your audience on Twitter, and those specific authors are like, no, I have no interest in it. It's not my thing. I'd rather write more, and I'd rather focus on other platforms, but I can't do it all. And so they don't go on Twitter, even though it's considered for them. It's considered that they should be on Twitter for selling their books and stuff like that. So yeah, he talks about how the 80-20 rule, which is basically 80% of your results come from 20% of your input, or 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your clients. It's basically a very small amount of things, input or marketing or work is responsible for 80% of the results of the revenue, of the success. So you want to figure out what is the minimum viable dose that you need to do in order to get those results instead of trying to do it all. Yeah, the 80-20 rule is huge, and I've known about it, and I'm practicing it in all of my businesses. It's so important for you to implement. I'll probably do another video just on the 80-20 rule so you can really understand it. It's also called the Pareto principle. Now, last takeaway is that you can also seek a different location or a different environment just for your deep work. So he talked about how J.K. Rowling, the one who wrote Harry Potter books, she actually had to check herself into a hotel for about 6 months to finish, I believe it was her last Harry Potter book, because she couldn't concentrate at home. She couldn't get it done at home. So she just went to a different location. She removed herself from the everyday life, and that helped her to finish that book. Another example he gave is of a I believe it was a guy who booked a plane ticket, a round-way airplane ticket to, I believe it was Japan or somewhere else, maybe, I don't remember exactly, but it was a long flight just so he can write his book, or do his writing. And so he basically went on the plane and wrote all the time while he's on the plane, then got off, had an espresso at the gate at the other location, then got back on the plane and flew back just to keep writing. So that's an extreme change of environment to make yourself productive, but I really do think it works. And I try to do the same myself, where I noticed certain type of tasks are better done in certain different environments. So for example, usually I work from my office, which is like right over there. So I leave my apartment to go and work at my office. That already makes me way more productive and more focused on my work. But I've noticed also there are certain tasks that sometimes I'm just better off sitting on the couch. Like sometimes when I plan things out, I'm better off reclining on my couch at home. There are certain tasks that could be better done at a Starbucks coffee versus the office. So yeah, you can definitely experiment with that. Your environment definitely has some direct impact on you and on certain and providing certain stimuli for you for a certain type of work. So I definitely recommend you experiment with that as well. So yeah, that's the 4 main takeaways from deep work. There's many more. It's an excellent book. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching me on YouTube, give me a like, subscribe to this YouTube channel, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought of the book yourself. If you're listening to me on the iTunes, on the podcast, that's awesome. You can always, if you want to switch to the audio experience, just check me out. I'm on iTunes, and subscribe and leave us a review. Leave me a review. Let me know how you're liking this podcast. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, see you guys next time.